Joining me now to talk about it, Kevin Hassett, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. And wait, they never put it in, Kevin. The name of your book is Stop the Socialism Drift. What's the name of the book? The producers are so bad.
That's all people need to know.
What's it called? The Drift? It's the most timely book of the year. Stop socialism.
Go by the Drift. Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Stopping the slide to socialism. That's right.
All right. So he's a smart fellow. And Russ Vought, former OMB director and president of the Center for Renewing America. So let me just start with Kevin on inflation, because I can't wait to get. I want to get to this incredible omnibus bill. But Kevin Hassett, you know, you could take energy out of the index. Inflation's rising 6.5% year on year. And they don't tell you that. Biden doesn't tell you that. Or you can say, well, yeah, but before the invasion in late February, gasoline prices has gone up by how much?
Yeah, before the invasion, you know, they had gone up by, what, $2 a gallon or so since Biden took office. The thing, though, that I think is most interesting, Larry, about those quotes that you just played is that they're basically saying, look, it's not our fault. It can't be our fault. It's Putin's fault, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the point of those statements, as if the president of the United States has no impact whatsoever on Putin's decision to go into Ukraine. Right, and so he's basically conceding an enormous amount of weakness that, you know, a Trump White House never would have conceded. Like, to say that Putin going into Ukraine is completely independent of Joe Biden, that's the problem. That's the problem.
That is a problem. And by the way, as an aside, but I think an important one, Kevin, as long as he insists on not owning the failure of his policies, he's never going to solve it. He'll never solve it.
Right, he won't change them.
All right, deficit spending, money creation, over-regulation. He doesn't see it that way. I mean, Russ Vought, you're sort of the regulatory czar over there at OMB. I mean, he won't. I compare it. I said the regulatory octopus, the tentacles reach out into all these agencies across the government that are strangling our whole energy industry. And Biden won't, you know, he won't acknowledge that. He won't own that.
Yeah, they've done the reverse of what we did. We went in there with a goal of 2 for 1 every single time that we had to do something on the regulatory front of cutting a regulation back. They've done the exact opposite. First of all, overturning that reform, but ensuring that every decision that they make is in the best interest of climate change, which is their code for anti-energy. So every decision that they make regulatorily is from that standpoint, in addition to putting it through a critical race theory lens. So just think about that from a government-wide perspective, what that does in terms of freedom and opportunity and growth. It puts a huge brake on it, and we are seeing it everywhere when we look at the real impact.
Now, Kevin Hassett, you have taught all of us deficit spending is inflationary. Okay, may not be the only factor, but it's a big one. And the Federal Reserve comes in and monetizes the deficits and so forth. They just passed a $1.5 trillion bill, omnibus bill, discretionary spending bill in the House that probably no human being read. Even the people that wrote the bill probably don't know the other parts of the bill. We had Senator Bill Hagerty on this show yesterday. He's on the Senate Appropriations Committee. He hasn't seen a bill. He has no idea what's in the bill, but they're rolling because the chair and the ranking Republican want it. $1.5 trillion, Kevin, I think it's plus 7%, some such thing over the year-ago baseline. And on top of that, earmarks. So if I say to you we should freeze federal spending to stop inflation, this doesn't really look like it, does it?
Right. You know, and in fact, federal spending has to go down, and it has to go down a lot if we're going to get ahead of the curve on inflation. And so basically, sadly, we're looking at, you know, there has been a big oil shock, or the oil price has gone up a lot because of Biden policies. We've had inflation go way up, and now the Fed has to tighten, and the Fed is tightening precisely at a moment where we could well be looking at a recession beginning as early as the second quarter, maybe even in the first quarter. And so the Fed is going to be tightening in a recession. Honest to goodness, it's one of the scarier moments I've seen for the economy in a really, really good long time, probably back to the 70s. And I have a hard time figuring out how it's going to end well, but it's certainly not going to end soon if they continue to pursue policies as crazy as what they've just done with the omnibus bill.
That's right. So, Russ Vought, you're the budget guy among your other skills and talents. What do you make of this bill? 1.5 trillion, whatever.
Yeah, in some respects it's historic, Larry, because normally when high inflation is on the scene, that is the thing that shocks the political class into action. And the appropriations process is literally the only automatic leverage point in a given year for a member of Congress to vote the right way on spending matters. And in the face of that, in the dark of night, they have a 2,700-page bill that increases at least 6% year over year, $100 billion, and has reams of earmarks. So we're spending money on $600,000 for a greenhouse in New York City, $2.5 million for bike paths in Vermont, $475,000 for a diversity inclusion institute on Ohio State. The American people are just wondering, is anyone paying attention and minding the store while this is all going on? And the answer is no.
So $1.5 trillion, just to try to create some perspective, $1.5 trillion, the overspending excess demand bill of last March was $1.9 trillion, and that turned out to be very inflationary. Kevin's, argued it then. Our Democratic friends, Furman and Larry Summers. So, Russ, is any of this paid for? Not that I want it. I'm just saying, how is this going to be financed?
Yeah, you think about the fact that, outside of a COVID situation, we generally have been running $1 trillion structural deficits. And so the reality is a $1.5 trillion bill that's largely being paid for by deficit spending. Mm-hmm. And so, we're going to see, we're coming down off of COVID spending a little bit. And so I think we're going to be higher than $1 trillion deficits substantially. But this is all going to be added to deficits in debt. And it's just going to exacerbate a lot of the problems that we're seeing given the most recent inflationary news that has been escalating.
I am amazed that GOP leaders didn't stand up on a stage with a megaphone and scream about this. I am amazed. That's just my own thought. And I also say we got to get out. There's never enough time in life. But, Kevin, it's not going to end well. You are right. It is not going to end well. Right. These things never do. Anyway, Kevin Hassett, thank you. Please buy his book and Russell Vought. All right.